My childhood dream that was making movies for me was like going to the moon. If you take a look at the credits in a motion picture, you will see that there are like 150 names, but the writer is mainly one or two people.
If someone wanted to become a screenwriter, what would be kind of like milestones that you would say they would develop themselves as a good screenwriter?
Well, the thing about being a screenwriter is that you need to shoot the whole film in your head. If you're a writer, you need to know something about law. I always say we write scripts, but we sell the rights to the scripts. Nobody would say about himself, I'm a bad person. You have to understand that there are more than one point of view and you have to be open and observe people. I don't know if I'm not going to direct my next project, so we'll see. This is just a start.
Hi, this is a discussion with Pablo Del Teso, an amazing screenwriter and an incredible instructor here at Gritnova. He's an award-winning screenwriter, has worked on several projects and received several awards, including the National Academy of Cinematic Arts and other awards that has been in recognition to his work that has been in the film or television industry. Now, we are incredibly proud to have him as part of our network and as mentors and instructor in Gritnova. He is now leading the screenwriting module at Gritnova, teaching the students how to write their first or maybe not their first, maybe scripts, and to be able to pitch it in front of producers in Hollywood. But today, this is a discussion to explore the field of screenwriting and where it's going and the different technologies that are emerging and how it's impacting the field and how this field is going to look like for the next few years. So enjoy. Pablo.
Hey.
How are you?
Fine, thanks.
You know, it's one of the things that always come to mind is most of the part that I do is try to find great experts in certain fields, but also ones that are really good at transferring those kind of skills to younger generations or the ones who are interested to acquire those kind of skills. And this is what I really like about you, that it's not that you really have the good skills and the experience, obviously, in the industry, but you're one of the very few ones that really know how to transfer those kind of like skills to allow others to get into the field and start writing. So want to start with that. How's so far your experience in the module, in the screenwriting module? And if you can tell us a bit more, what are the students doing right now, and what are they kind of like? What is it leading up to?
So far, so good. Nobody died. So now it's going great. They're now finishing the synopsis stage. So we are going to go through 4 different stages. They have already introduced their ideas. They pitched their ideas. So they voted for the 4 more potentially interesting ideas to develop. Then they wrote a premise, and now we're finishing the 3rd version of synopsis. So we are just in the middle of the process. There are 2 more steps ahead.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and it's very interesting to see the development of their projects. There's a big progress, like week over week, and seeing them kind of like pitch in the sessions what they're doing. But if we wanted to step a little bit back and look at like screenwriting, so how do you define a screenwriter? What is the different type of roles that a screenwriter could have, and what paths could a screenwriter take?
Not many, actually.
Okay.
Because it's if you take a look at the credits in a motion picture, at the end you will see that there are departments like the art department or the photography department that there are like 150 names.
Right.
But the writer is mainly one or two people. So it's the writing department in a film. It's normally just a writer. Maybe there is a consultant or a script editor that is helping the writer for a film. In a TV show, there are more roles because you have the head writer, or above the head writer is going to be the showrunner. And then you have the writers, And maybe if it's a big show, you have someone that specializes in some kind of dialogue or some characters. So there are more people working in a writer's room than in a film. But still, there are no more. There aren't any 150 names in that department.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And what do the different types of projects look like at the end? So let's say film, but also like series, television series, a video game, maybe. What kind of projects as an end result could?
Well, you when you write, you can end up with the two main products are a screenplay for a feature film or a
Right.
screenplay
Yeah.
for a Bible, in fact, for a TV show.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I try to do something for this game
Video games.
video games,
Okay.
but it was just something to try with my brother, but then it didn't take off. So I said, okay, let's go back to film.
Right. Right. But is it so because there's like the gaming industry is huge, and assuming there are a lot of screenwriters who are writing for video games, right? Is this a growing field or not?
I don't know much, but the few things that I found out is that there are no really screenwriters. They have another name, and they don't
Okay.
really come from film school. They come
Okay.
from systems or
Okay.
video game. Yeah, it's a whole
Okay.
different
thing. Okay. Got you. Okay. Cool. So film and mostly like series. And if we wanted to zoom out a bit again and look at your journey in this, we were talking a little bit before about how like you were in the UK and studying and so on. Can you take us through the journey of
Yeah,
of
it was
Pablo? How did it start? And maybe tell us more about what you're doing now, right now. Like, what are you currently involved in?
good. It was a long and winding road, as the Beatles would say. Well, I come from actually, I was born and raised in Campana City, which is a small city near Buenos Aires, and it's full of factories.
Okay.
So my childhood dream that was making movies was for me was like going to the moon because I didn't have any relatives or anyone
Right.
in the film industry. But so after I finished high school, I said, okay, let's compromise. Let's do something that might be not as difficult as making movies. So I studied advertising because I said, okay, it's like telling a story in 20 seconds. So let's study advertising. I did that for 5 years. And when I finished, I said to my parents, no, you know what? I really want to make movies. And they say, great, now we have to pay for your sister's university. So find a way. So I got a scholarship and I went to the best film school in Buenos Aires. That it was the only one that you could go for free because only 8 people would
Oh wow.
enter.
Okay.
So I had to take a lot of tests, and I got there to National Film School. And there I studied direction and production.
Okay.
And I did some independent films as a producer, and then I said, okay, this is not for me. And then I wanted to come to Europe, but I didn't have money. And I didn't want to go anywhere. I wanted to go to London, and I didn't want to just go to London. I wanted to do something in London. I wanted to study. So I got another scholarship, and I got a scholarship to go to study feature film development as a master's degree at University of London Goldsmiths College.
Nice.
And that's where I understood that my place was in screenwriting, because then I started to know what I knew what it was about, but I started writing actually. And I stayed there for a couple of years, and then I got a job back at Buenos Aires. So I went back to Buenos Aires and started working as a consultant first.
Consulting what?
Scripts.
Okay.
So the production companies. No, first of all, I started reading scripts
Okay.
for a big production company. So they get scripts from
Yeah.
anywhere, and they have to have someone to
Filter them out.
take a look at them and say, tell me if it's any good. So I would do that first. Then I started writing my own scripts and helping screenwriters. Or normally it was directors that didn't know how to write, so they would ask me to help them write as a consultant. Later on, I started writing my own stuff and producing some of my films. And finally, I got to the point where production companies called me to write a script. But sometimes I have some, or call me to ask me if I have some script already written on that subject or whatever.
Okay.
So right now I'm doing that. I'm doing a script consultancy and writing script for feature films. And now I'm working on one feature film and two series projects.
And we're gonna see them anytime soon
I hope so.
on Netflix or
One of them is already entering pre-production. The other two are still in development.
okay.
So it could be next year, or it could be in 10 years' time. You never know.
Nice. Cool. How did you kind of like transition from getting to explore the field of the film industry? So you knew that you wanted to be in the film and make movies. What was the trigger that you found that screenwriting is the one for me? Like why because you studied to become a director or like a producer, but then you didn't end up pursuing it. And this is probably a problem.
People ask me, why don't you direct your own?
That's a good question.
And I say, first of all, it's a whole different set of abilities that you need to have in order to direct compared to writing. Second, I don't like people much. So if I have to write, I just have to deal with a producer, maybe a producer and a director, not many more people. But now I'm going to direct a film, and I already had the experience of shooting the trailer for the film. Not the trailer,
like a teaser or
the teaser.
Okay.
So, but it was a good experience because I remember that I didn't want to direct for a long time because I got stuck with the idea of what filming was like when I was at film school. And it was many, many years ago. And I said, okay, so I've changed, people have changed, and it's not really the same. I'm on a different level. I remember that it was very stressful for me. So I didn't want to have that stress of so many people asking you things. But now it was completely natural for me. So I surprised myself finding out that I sort of like people in the end. It wasn't.
That's great.
So yeah, it was a very good experience. So I don't know if I'm not going to direct my next project. So we'll see. Well, this is just a start. I'm just tipping the waters of direction. But I do know that this writing came naturally for me because since I was a kid, I used to write stories. And then I remember that when I was a kid, because this was now, like a few years ago, I say, okay, yeah, I remember that I used to play that I was filming things using the roll of the toilet paper.
Right.
Yeah. So I say, okay. So I knew it from when I was a child, but I never realized until a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's interesting because when you're a child, just like playing, you're doing whatever you enjoy doing, and now if you get to do that as like your life,
it was a weird challenge to play with that. Most of my friends would play football, but I would play with toilet paper.
Cool. Okay, so if someone wanted to become a screenwriter and doesn't know like any anything about screenwriting, like starting from scratch, and it's something that they want to kind of like explore, what would you say, like looking back at your kind of like experience, and from your experience, what would be kind of like milestones that you would say would be important for someone to check so that they would develop themselves as a good screenwriter?
Well, the thing about being a screenwriter is that you need to shoot the whole film in your head
Okay.
before anyone is involved.
Okay.
So you have to know a little bit about everything. So for me, it was a good thing that I learned direction and production before,
Okay.
because when you write a sentence, that sentence might mean 500,000 extra dollars,
Right.
and you
Yeah.
happily write it. So you have to sort of know everything from production, direction, photography, editing as well, because you do that, all of that in your head. When you finish a script, it's like a manual, like a set of instructions you give or you propose the director to make the movie. It's
Yeah.
like the recipe to make the movie.
Yeah.
So you have to think about how it's going to be shot, what is going to what the rhythm will be, what the editing will be like. So the other day, one of the students asked me, because I some of my films are with different characters, and they have their own story, so it's more than one protagonist, and it's kind of complicated thing. But he said, but do you just write the whole stories and then the director just cuts them in the? And I said no, because it's not. You have to do the montage yourself in your head, because otherwise it doesn't magically work.
Yep.
So you have to edit all the stories together in your head, and you have to know what would be the best place for this action to happen, what would be a good way of making this film appealing visually, and also for the actors, because one of my films that is called The Crimes That Bind. It's a very low budget film, but we got very good actors, because I think it's because each of them, each of the characters had their moment where they could shine,
Okay.
where they could show to the people how good an actor they were. So that's a plus, especially if you don't have a huge budget. That's a very good thing. And you, as a writer, you are also playing. You're also like an actor, because every time you write a character, you have to be in the head of that character, and you have to look at the world from his or her point of view. So you have to be a little bit crazy to do this well, because you have to jump from one role to the other, from one place to the other, in order to make it work in the end. And yeah, so I think that you have to know a little bit of everything. If you know a lot of everything, it's much better. But you really need to know what the whole process is, from development until post-production and marketing, because you also have to incorporate in your story, you have to make sure that there's a market for it, because at some point you are going to pitch it, and somebody is going to buy it. So,
Okay, interesting. So I'm glad we kind of like designed the program in a way they get to see the different side of the film as well. But so if someone had to go through all the different aspects of what makes a film, whether during or post, or like in the marketing and so on. So let's say as one first big milestone, get, let's say, the knowledge or skills, and then you'd start to write your first few projects.
yes.
How do you start your career? Like if you have the skills now, you kind of like trained or written some maybe small projects. How do you kickstart your?
One of the few things about writing is that you can do it on your own. You don't need anybody's money to start your own story. You just
Right,
need
yeah.
talent, time, a lot of time, and work, and you can end up with the final product that is your script, and then you can go out there and try to sell it. So I would say that after studying, and maybe if you have the chance to participate in a production, let's say as a production assistant or whatever, to see what it's really like to be in the set, and that would also be another milestone. Then you can write your own scripts, and I would, if you have the ability, because it's a different ability. For me, for example, it was great to consult, to be a script editor, because that way I was able to learn from the mistakes of hundreds of
Interesting. Okay.
projects without having to write hundreds
Right.
of
Okay.
screenplays. I have already consulted like 300 plus screenplays, and now I can identify many problems that I even when I'm writing, I say, oh, I'm doing the same thing. So it's a very good way of learning from other people's mistakes. But if you don't have the ability, because if you're a good writer, doesn't mean that you're going to be a good consultant for screenwriters. But you can read screenplays, and you can just practice on your own.
Okay. Okay, so you've learned, let's say, from 300 plus
Yeah.
projects that, and you learned from their mistakes. What are the typical mistakes that you see in a in a project?
Okay, well, I don't want to get too technical because they are very technical
The
mistakes.
things that
but
you see
let's
a
say
lot.
in
like-
general is the main mistake is that most people think anybody can do it.
Mm,
So it's not as difficult as being a director of photography. It's not as difficult as being a director, but it that's what people think. But it is 10 times more difficult than doing that, because you have to do the job of all the people that are going to work later, but in your head. And the other thing is that you do it by yourself. So Robert McKee says something. He says, well, people don't say, okay, I love music. I've heard many operas. So I have some free time this summer. I'm going to write a symphony. Because they say, everybody knows that writing a symphony is something difficult. You have to have talent, and you have to have the skills and the technical knowledge to do so. But there are many people that say, well, I love movies. I've seen so many movies. I have free time in this summer, so I'm going to write a script.
Yeah.
And then you realize that it's not as easy. So for first-time writers, I would say that that would be the problem, thinking that it's easier than it actually is. And the other thing is writing the script as if you were the audience. I really notice when this happens. It's hard to explain, but you see that they are describing the thing that they would write as an audience. So in those kinds of scripts, they normally lack depth.
okay.
So you see that everything is on the surface. It sounds like a movie, but it's not really. There's nothing. It's just hollow.
What gives it depth?
You have to really apart from the technical things, you really have to know your characters.
Okay.
And you have to know your characters as if you were your friends. So you have to know all the good things, all the bad things, and you have to know about themselves more than themselves.
Okay.
About them more than themselves. So you have to know even the things that they don't know about themselves. So you really have to get into their psychology and first of all, in your first scripts, normally what you will do is write about the people you know, because you sort of naturally know your mom, your friends, your cousin. So you know what they would say, what they would do or wouldn't do. And that helps you make your characters more believable. But sometimes, as in my case, they say, well, this is a story about a serial killer. And I don't know any serial killers.
Yeah.
So you have to really get into their heads and you have to really do research. The research is key for knowing your characters. So I think knowing your characters is not the only thing, but it's one of the main things that will help you write a story that sounds natural. I always say that there's a magic moment where if you have done your job the right way and you know and you really know your characters, you are going to feel as a writer that they are writing the story, not you. If that happens, that's great because it means that when the audience watches the film or the series, they're going to feel the same thing, that there wasn't a guy making the characters do that. The characters did it just themselves.
Yeah. The characters wrote the story themselves. Yeah. Like you're just like kind of like helping the characters kind of like get into the flow of the story.
This way, you just show them the way.
You're directing the characters to write their own story. Interesting. You mentioned getting into the psychology of the characters and so on. What kind of, maybe we talked about technical skills, but are there soft skills that would be very crucial for screenwriters to have or acquire that could result in a better project overall, like maybe psychology for screenwriters? Or
well, I come from Argentina. It has the greatest per capita psychologists in the world, so that's normal in my culture. But I found that not in all countries is like that, and that some people don't really know how the mind works. And so you really need to learn a little bit about psychology, because otherwise I had, for example, it happened to me with one script that the director couldn't understand the characters because his way of reading people was like very straightforward. It's like, why would this woman stay with her husband if he's hitting her? She's stupid. And she say, well, mine is a little bit more complex than just that.
Yeah.
So you really need to learn about psychology and be, for example, for me, I tend to listen to other people's conversation on the bus or the metro or maybe at a cafe, and you listen the way that people talk and the way that they reason and the way they see the world. And I don't know why, but sometimes when I'm in a bench and there is like a crazy woman or something, they always come to talk to me. I don't know. I have like a special magnet. I don't know.
Kind of like get inspired by some ideas. Maybe.
No, and I really listen to people in general because that's a very good way of understanding other people rather than just you and your friends.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Anything other than psychology would be a good soft skill for screenwriters?
Well, these are not soft skills, but things technical things that I think you really need if you're a writer. You need to know something about law.
Yes.
Because that's what's going to... I always say we write scripts, but we sell the rights to the scripts. So what pays our rent or our food is the rights to the script, not the script itself. So you really have to know that. You also have to know something. I wouldn't say you have to know, but it's very good if you know something about marketing, because you need to convince somebody that there's a market for this and that is good business if they buy your rights to the script. And I would say, if soft skills is being able to listen to people, to observe people. If you don't know technical aspects of psychology, at least to have an open mind, to understand people's point of view, how they view life from their point of view. And you really have to have an open mind, because if you're if you think that there are good and bad people, it's nobody would say about himself, well, yeah, I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
Even the worst murderer in human history would say, I had to do it because it was required, or because these were bad people or whatever. So everyone from them, you have to understand that there are more than one point of view, and you have to be open and observe people, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's interesting. It reminded me of the Joker for some reason.
Okay. Yeah, well,
Because we always took the side of, in this case, Batman, and like what's going on in that area, but we never looked at his background and like his.
well, that's a great example.
Yeah.
If you ask him, he's not a bad person. He was made that way.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
had to do that.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Okay, interesting. And okay, so if you're taking, let's say, marketing into perspective while writing and knowing some of the legal things, what would be appealing for producers to then buy this script? So if you have an idea for a movie, let's say, and you spend some time writing it and coming up with different ideas and developing it and so on, and you want to kind of like sell it or pitch it. What do producers look at? Because I know also a lot of projects that are really great ideas but don't make it, don't end up kind of like being produced. So how do you develop something that could develop into something that could be produced? And yeah, looking at it from the producer's side right now. So
Yeah, I would say whenever we talk about audience, we make the same mistake because we tend to think that there's one audience. And the first audience for your script is the producers that are going to
Right.
buy it. And there is not just one kind of producers. So some of them might like some things, some might like other things. But in the end, I would say that if you're if if your script is interesting and has interesting characters and story for an audience, and it can be produced for an amount low enough to make a good business by selling this story to this audience, I would say that would make a winner screenplay. So when we started the course at Gritnova, some of the students asked me, well, should we think about things that are not very expensive to? And I said, no, because what you need to think about your project in terms of how good a business it could be. So if you have a very small story that could be produced for a very small amount of money, but there's nobody interested in it, it's
yeah,
terrible business.
yeah,
If you have a good story that will cost a lot of money, but the potential audience is worldwide audience and it's like,
yeah,
I don't know, Pixar film. Well, that then, although this is a very expensive film, it's going to be a very good business.
yeah. It has the potential to return like the money.
Yes.
invested.
The best thing that can happen is that you have a very good story that can be produced by a very small amount of money, and there's a huge audience.
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So
ROI.
that's that's the simplest answer. To have a story that can be produced for an amount of money that it represents just a fraction of what it will make in the market,
Yeah.
but you never know really. So
Yeah, interesting. So even when you think you have a great idea, you also have to take into account the financing, like the finances and like the business side of things. Because if it doesn't make sense financially, then regardless of how good the idea is, it's probably not going to make it, right?
yeah.
Okay. Okay. Interesting. Let's talk about AI and
Okay.
how is this changing the industry, and how are screenwriters maybe changing how they're writing, or how the process maybe it's is changing, and are we gonna see less writers in the future?
And I'm taking a course on that next week, by the way. But because I don't know enough about AI, I
Okay.
use it a little bit.
Yep.
But I was talking to my brother a couple of months ago, and we were talking about what jobs would be on the line with AI, and mainly potentially all jobs will be on the line. And he said something. He said, "Okay, you may lose your job, but you could also use it as a tool for your job." And I started using it as a tool for my job to do all the boring stuff. Like, for example, you have a synopsis that is 5,000 words, but the production company wants a synopsis of 3,000
Okay.
words.
Yeah.
So instead of taking a couple of days, just going through the whole thing and making it fit into 3,000 words, you just go to ChatGPT and just do it, and it does it in a couple of seconds. So those kind of things, it's good. Then, for example, when I read something in English, for example, since it's not my mother tongue, I realized that one some part of my attention is used for the language. But if I write in Spanish, I have 100% of my attention on the story and the characters, and then I use ChatGPT or whatever to translate it and just do all the necessary corrections afterwards. So that also is very good for me as a tool. The, I don't know if I don't think my profession is going to disappear, but I do think that many stages of screenwriting might disappear, but it will all depend on the politicians and the laws,
Yeah.
because the law everywhere in the world says that a work of art belongs to an author. So when they made the law, AI didn't exist. So I think that in order to protect our work, politicians should add, and the author has to be someone with flesh and bones, because because if now you can go to any AI website and say, okay, write a story about I don't know, a guy that kills his wife and just gets away with it, and they will do it, and it will do it, and it will do it like that,
Yep.
and quite okay.
Yep.
The only bad thing about that is that you will end up with a medium, probably with a medium, with an average
Yeah. Like
character, an
mediocre.
average
Right.
story, because the only thing that AI doesn't have. I was thinking about this because AI. Every time I ask AI to translate or summarize something that I wrote, I'm teaching my enemy to write better
That's
scripts.
true. That's true.
But the only thing AI is going to be able to learn not just from me, but from 100,000 writers and millions screenplays and TV shows and movies, and I will never beat AI with that. The only thing that we as authors have that AI doesn't have is the life experience. They can imitate life experience, taking the information that you give AI about what you think experience is, but they will never
Yeah.
never say never. So AI will never be able to experience life until they build robots and live like you, and you wouldn't tell the difference
They will
between a
have flesh
human.
and bones as well, and then they
Yeah.
have to kind of like change the law again.
So I don't know, but I do know that AI can do many jobs for free or for very little money in a couple of seconds, that before you needed to hire like 3, 4, 5 screenwriters to do this I don't know, YouTube channel or whatever, and those things I think AI will be able to replace very easily.
Okay.
Unless there's a law saying there's a law in every country saying that AI cannot. I don't know what the law says because this law doesn't say anything about it, but it's more a legal thing. I think that an artistic thing because I think AI can do almost everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So far.
Yeah.
Next year, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, and it's like advancing very rapidly. Like seeing it month after month. And then there's the question of who owns it. If like ChatGPT wrote a script, well, can you use it?
That's the thing because, for example, because I would say we would have to ask for a lawyer, and probably the lawyer doesn't know either. Because if you write something like this story about the guy that kills his wife and gets away with it, and I just take your script and shoot it and not pay you anything, how are you going to sue me if you didn't really write it? The lawyer would say, how are you going to prove that he didn't really write it?
Yeah.
So there will be another AI website where you can check if it was written by an AI or a human being. I don't know.
Then you track who prompted the script, like because you came up with the prompt. Yeah. And then that's the new.
You will be the author of the prompt. That I would say, but the prompt is just an idea, and legally ideas cannot be registered. Cannot be.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't own anything.
That's true.
Well, you could cheat and you could say no, I wrote it myself. Just prove that I didn't.
Yeah. Because this question applies to also different industries as well. Like even in architecture, for example, and you can generate images of buildings, but did you create do you own this idea or not? Because what AI is doing is similar to what you're doing. Like you can look at you can walk in the street and like look at different buildings, and you're getting inspired. And this is kind of like your human learning by looking at different projects, and then you come up with an idea, and it's kind of like mimicking how our process basically into doing it. But yeah, you're right. Like the laws are not set in place. It's very vague.
I feel like the laws are here and AI is way there, and I think nobody really knows how to deal with it because the concept is completely upside down. It's not like similar to what was before, but we need to adjust something. I think that the laws will with internet already. You need to think of another way of protecting rights for people, and I think that's a problem because the law normally what does is say, okay, this is yours, and I will try to protect you from somebody else that wants to use this if you don't let them. But now this is not yours; it's everybody's. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And is there anything else that might affect the field other than AI moving forward? So because there's also the idea of like the short attention span of the younger generation now, because before it was like you can catch the audience for probably a longer period of time, you can have them engaged. But now with like the effect of social media and like the endless kind of like scrolling, the effect on our minds as well, does that in any way affect how you write stories or not at all?
I don't know.
Okay.
I can give you my theory, but it's just take it like a not proved theory. I think that for that kind of consumption, there are better media than a TV series or a movie. You have TikTok and you have Instagram or whatever, and it gives you instant satisfaction.
Yeah.
So I don't think that is that we can do anything to replace that kind of consumption. I think that's a whole different genre.
Okay. Yeah.
So I think that people that go to the cinema, people that just the Netflix on weekends, they are looking for another kind of experience that is the what a movie or a series can offer them, and they just take the time and make popcorn.
Right.
So I think it's a different thing than being on the underground and just
Right. Yeah.
spending the time for making the trip shorter. So I might be completely wrong, but I think those are different ways of consumption, and nobody's going to replace TikTok by a film.
Yeah. Makes sense.
I mean, the necessity that you
Got you. Yeah.
that you have when you watch TikTok is not the same when you watch a film.
Yeah. At least the incentive, what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Because it needs 1.5 hours.
yeah. That's true. Yeah,
So
okay. And okay, so if you're looking now, so you're training new screenwriters to develop and their skills and so on. If you are reviewing, let's say you want to hire a screenwriter, and I don't know, I show you, let's say, 100 profiles or portfolios, who would stand out? What would make a screenwriter stand out from the crowd?
that's such a general.
Let's assume they're like the same at the same level. So after maybe 2 years,
If they have all been to film school,
Sure, yeah.
they have at least written a couple of
Yeah, yeah.
screenplays, and they have the same experience and knowledge.
yes. What would you be looking
what would
for?
be other than experience and,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
knowledge? I would say I would need to have an interview, because it wouldn't be something that is in yours in their CVs.
Okay.
So I would have an interview and just try to find out if they're curious enough. If they are curious enough, I think that's a very important soft skill, because you really need to be curious to advance in this profession, because there's always going to be a new challenge and a new kind of character and a new kind of genre and technology and production values that you need to take into account. So you really need to be very good at being curious in order to do your research, and also to adapt. So I would have an interview and make some tests in order to find out if they are curious enough and if they're adaptable enough.
Okay. It's more about like the character and the mind, what's going on, and like how curious the person is. Okay, that's interesting. And okay, so if you wanted to look at like all of the kind of like what we're consuming now, let's say, in movies or series on streaming platforms or Hollywood productions, are there any storytelling cliches that you would wish would disappear from Hollywood? Or
Well, I haven't seen it for a long time, but there was a cliche that used to bug me a lot. There was when, like in Pretty Woman, putting someone that didn't have an education in a watching an opera and crying, as if, I don't know. I think the idea was that this is art and you really don't need to use your head or your education. It transcends education or class or whatever. And I've seen a couple of operas, and they were quite boring for me. So I didn't buy that. But I haven't seen it. I have seen it, like there was a time when I see it like 3, 4, 5 times. But no. The thing is, I wouldn't say cliche, but what I really don't like is all this the importance that the superheroes stories took over Hollywood by assault, and now you see these stories that the stories are cliche and
Okay.
the characters are cliche. And although in the very few years they have been trying like to do something like the Joker
Right.
or to sort of make it less cliche, I still don't buy it.
Right. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah. So like it's very clear that from like the production studios, they kind of like it's a safe bet to go with like the big stories, superheroes, and like the well-known stories, making it very limiting to young like new ideas to get into that kind of like big global stage. Um,
Yeah, but this is the end of a process that started in the 90s when all pro- all managers in the studios were replaced. These were people that were born in the film industry and they came from the film industry and they were replaced by people that came from marketing. So if you have a movie that played very well, why not make a second and third and fourth and fifth and until people get sick of that and then we start making that.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I don't like about these franchise films is that they just stretch it until it breaks.
Yeah,
And it seems that they don't know when to say enough is enough. Or this is the end. I don't care if people want more. This is how the story ends, and this is what happened. It's difficult to do that because you say, okay, well, but let's make another one.
Yeah. So okay, what's your favorite?
Don't ask me for my favorite movie because it's
From a script wise, and then you're like, which one was your like the one that you didn't like your probably your worst.
No, but that's so difficult. No, it's very difficult to pick your favorite. I'm like I don't
Or
know.
probably genres that you think are well written.
Well, genres that I don't like is superheroes because it's normally very cliche and you know everything and horror films. But horror films, I think it's not the genre, it's the audience, the problem. But if you watch any horror films, it's very difficult to find a good horror films. The only one that I remember that I said, oh, this is actually very good is the Babadook.
Okay.
That's the name, because it had a very deep psychological meaning that if you wanted to scratch the surface, there was something there. That is something that normally doesn't happen to me with many horror films.
Yeah.
There's nothing, but in that film, if you didn't want to scratch the surface, it was a very good horror film. But if you wanted to, there was substance there. So
wasn't this a name of like The Substance? Wasn't this
The Substance?
That so I had a friend of mine who got me to. I usually don't watch.
I saw
like,
it last week, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah. I usually don't watch like horror movies, but a friend of mine like insisted, and there's depth in that. Like
It's very dark.
Yeah, that's true. but there's like deeper meanings into like it's not just like a superhero story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the thing. I could tell you from the genres that you didn't like what movies you actually liked. And I would say, for example, the Babadook for horror films and for I don't know superheroes. I wouldn't say the Joker because it's not really a superhero. I mean, if you put another name and you don't say that this is the bad guy in the Batman films, it could be just a very dramatic film about anyone else. But yeah, and the ones that I like are normally the ones that are intellectually satisfying.
Yeah.
And there has to, I mean, good films have to have two things for me. One is that I can admire the writer and say, Because when I watch films, I'm a writer. I always pay attention to the story, not just the visuals.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
visuals, okay, but the stories and the characters. And if I find a film that has a very good story, that I say, oh, this is very well constructed, and I have a character that makes me connect emotionally, those are the films that I like most. And it's been years since I haven't had that
Mm,
experience in the same film for a long time.
interesting.
For a long time, yeah. I don't know what happened.
Yeah, why?
I don't know if it's just me or films just don't appeal to me. I don't know.
Okay. Um, last two questions. I don't want to make it very long. What would you advise any aspiring screenwriter?
Um, well, to study a lot and to be ready to adjust, to take any opportunity, even if it's not a writing opportunity, but it's something that has to do with making films or series, in order to learn the craft, to learn what other people are going to do. Because everything that you are going to write is going to have a consequence on hundreds of people that are going to be producing what you are writing.
Yeah, that's true.
And to develop a thick skin.
What does that mean?
Prepare to be humbled by reality because they are probably not getting 7-figure contracts, and you may find more people saying no to your proposal than people saying yes.
Yeah.
So be ready to be rejected because maybe your story is not good enough, or maybe it's a great story, but the people that you show it to don't know how to appreciate it, or do appreciate it, but don't see a good business in it. So be ready to be humbled by reality.
Yeah, that's true across all industries, everything basically, everyone like grit. We named some part of the company. It's like have grit, like just perseverance. Like you're gonna face a lot of rejections and no's. It's just like how bad do you want it? Like how much do you really want it to happen? So I think that's a really good kind of like ending advice. But to end it with my last question is, what's next for you? So what's Pablo doing for the next few years?
Okay, so I'm going to direct a film, hopefully. I'm currently working on two series projects and a feature film. And in my future, maybe I might enjoy directing so much that I maybe start directing my own movies or series. But I think that I'm going to move to the series market more than film, because in film the role of the writer is the most, if not the most, it's one of the most underrated roles.
Really?
There is. Yes. It's now that I sort of started directing something, I realize how underrated it is and how overrated the direction role is. Because if you're in the film industry, the director is the center of the universe. But in series, you have more. You have more stages.
Influence maybe, or
No, you can get to be not just a writer, you can be a showrunner. If you're a showrunner, you have influence on the creativity and on the artistic decisions of your of your product. So that interests me
Okay.
because it's very disappointing when you spend years of your life writing a script and then it's filmed by a director that did not understand the story, the characters, and it destroys
Yeah.
your whole your whole work. So I might I'm more interested in moving into series where you have more creative saying in the final product.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks a lot.
Welcome.